26th, 1986, the world changed. Not with a bang, but with a silent, invisible killer. A killer unleashed from the heart of a nuclear power plant, in a place most people had never heard of, Chernobyl. This isn't just a story about a disaster. It's a story about human ambition, catastrophic error, heroism, and the enduring legacy of a moment that shaped a generation. Tonight, we're taking you back to the dawn of that fateful day, and through the terrifying hours and days that followed, exploring the events that led to the worst nuclear disaster in history. From the control room operators making fateful decisions, to the firefighters battling an invisible enemy, to the liquidators who sacrificed everything. This is the story of Chernobyl. It's the early hours of April 26, 1986. At the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant in the Ukrainian SSR, part of the Soviet Union, the night shift is winding down. Reactor Unit 4, the newest and most powerful, is scheduled for a routine shutdown for maintenance. But before that, an experimental test is planned, a test designed to see if the reactor could still cool itself in the event of a power failure. To understand what happened next, you need to understand the RBMK reactor. It was a unique Soviet design, praised for its ability to produce both electricity and weapons-grade plutonium. But it had a critical flaw, a design characteristic that would prove deadly. At low power, it became incredibly unstable, and tonight, they were going to push it to its limits. Leading the test was Anatoly Dyatlov, a man known for his demanding nature and adherence to schedules. Below him were Alexander Akimov, the shift supervisor, and Leonid Toptanov, the senior reactor control engineer, young, relatively inexperienced men facing immense pressure. The test was already behind schedule. The plan was to gradually reduce the reactor's power, but due to an operator error or perhaps a misunderstanding of the reactor's behavior, the power dropped far lower than intended, to near zero. Akimov and Toptanov, recognizing the danger, wanted to abort the test. Akimov: "Comrade Dyatlov, the power is too low. We should postpone the test." Dyatlov: "No, we will continue. Raise the power." Under Dyatlov's relentless pressure, the operators began to withdraw control rods designed to absorb neutrons and slow the nuclear reaction. They were effectively trying to force the reactor to a higher power, ignoring safety protocols and the increasingly volatile readings on their instruments. They were fighting the reactor, and the reactor was starting to fight back. They had pushed the reactor into a dangerous state known as xenon-135, where a byproduct of fission, xenon-135, was absorbing neutrons and making it difficult to control the power. To compensate, they withdrew even more control rods, leaving the reactor with almost no safety margin. They were unknowingly setting the stage for catastrophe. It's now 1:23 a.m. The test begins. The main circulating pumps are switched off, simulating a power outage. The reactor's core temperature begins to rise. Within seconds, the power surged, not just a little, but catastrophically. The water coolant, designed to keep the core stable, began to flash into steam rapidly. This created a positive void coefficient, a fatal design flaw in the RBMK reactor. Instead of slowing the reaction, the steam actually increased it. Akimov: AZ-5, emergency shutdown. At 1:23:40 a.m., Akimov pressed the AZ-5 button, initiating a full emergency shutdown. The control rods began to drop back into the core, but the rapid increase in power, combined with another design flaw in the rods themselves, graphite tips that initially displaced water before absorbing neutrons, actually caused a final, devastating surge. The reactor core superheated, the fuel rods melted, the pressure inside Unit 4 became unimaginable. At 1:23:47 a.m., the first explosion ripped through the reactor building, instantly vaporizing tons of water and blowing the 1,000-ton concrete lid clean off the reactor. Seconds later, a second, even more powerful explosion occurred. This was not a nuclear explosion in the sense of a bomb, but a steam explosion, fueled by the superheated water coming into contact with molten reactor fuel. It blasted open the reactor core, exposing it to the atmosphere and sending a deadly plume of radioactive material high into the sky. In an instant, the world's most powerful nuclear reactor had become an open wound, spewing unimaginable amounts of radiation into the atmosphere. The silent killer was unleashed. Utter chaos and destruction in the reactor building, rubble everywhere, smoke, steam, silhouettes of men moving through the wreckage, sound of sirens in the distance growing louder. In the immediate aftermath, there was confusion, disbelief, and a desperate struggle to understand what had just happened. In the control room, Akimov and Toptanov were still alive, but disoriented and exposed to lethal levels of radiation. They believed the reactor was intact and that a fire had simply broken out. The first responders were the plant's own fire brigade, led by Lieutenant Vasily Ignatenko. They arrived within minutes, equipped only for conventional fires, completely unaware they were running into the most dangerous radioactive environment on Earth. Their bravery was immense, their sacrifice unimaginable. Their mission was to prevent the fire from spreading to Unit 3, which was still operating. They climbed to the roof of the turbine hall, directly above the burning reactor, tackling flames fueled by graphite and bitumen. They worked tirelessly, their bodies absorbing lethal doses of radiation with every breath, every movement. Inside the plant, doctors like Lyudmila Pripyat were swamped with casualties. Injured workers, exposed firefighters, all showing the horrifying initial symptoms of acute radiation syndrome: nausea, vomiting, dizziness, a metallic taste in their mouth. But even then, the true nature of the disaster was being downplayed. In Moscow, and even in the upper echelons of the plant management, there was a desperate attempt to control the narrative. The initial reports were vague, downplaying the severity of the incident. The word explosion was avoided. The reality was too terrifying to admit. Amid the chaos, one person was confirmed dead almost immediately: Valery Hodemchuk, a senior operator whose body was never recovered, forever entombed within the ruins of Reactor 4. He was the first official victim, but far from the last. While heroes fought fires and doctors tended to the dying, the city of Pripyat, just 3 kilometers away, slept in. Built for the plant workers and their families, it was a young, vibrant city of 50,000 people. On April 26th, they woke up to a beautiful spring day, oblivious to the invisible killer silently descending upon them. Children played in the streets, fishermen cast their lines in the river, young couples walked hand in hand. The air was warm, the sun was shining. The only sign of trouble was the faint smell of ozone and the towering plume of smoke from the plant. Most residents were told it was just a fire, under control. Radiation is a silent predator. It has no smell, no taste, no color. You can't see it, you can't feel it, but it tears through your cells, scrambling your DNA, causing irreversible damage. And on that day, Pripyat was being drenched in it. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the Soviet leadership was slowly grappling with the truth. Initial reports from the plant were contradictory and misleading. It took Swedish scientists detecting unusually high levels of radiation drifting across their country to force the Soviets to finally admit to a major nuclear accident. The world held its breath. The scale of the disaster, once revealed, sent shockwaves globally. But even then, the full truth was still being obfuscated. It wasn't until the afternoon of April 27th, nearly 36 hours after the explosion, that the order for evacuation was finally given for Pripyat. Residents were told to bring only essential documents, some food, and were promised they would return in 3 days. They left behind everything: their homes, their pets, their lives. They never returned. With the full scale of the disaster becoming undeniable, a massive effort was launched to contain the catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of men and women, known as liquidators, were mobilized. They were soldiers, miners, engineers, firefighters, and ordinary citizens, all called upon to battle an invisible enemy. Their first task was to extinguish the graphite fire still raging in the open core and to prevent further radioactive release. Helicopters flying directly over the inferno dropped thousands of tons of sand, lead, boron, and clay. The pilots, many receiving lethal doses of radiation, flew until their bodies could no longer function. Below the reactor, another terrifying threat emerged. The molten core, now known as the elephant's foot, was burning through the concrete floor, threatening to reach the groundwater, which would cause an even more catastrophic steam explosion, contaminating vast swaths of Europe. Miners were called in to dig a tunnel and build a heat exchanger, even though the technology to deal with such a situation didn't exist. Another critical mission: 3 men, nicknamed the Divers, volunteered to venture into the highly radioactive flooded basement of the reactor to open sluice gates. Their mission? To drain the water beneath the molten core, preventing it from interacting with the molten fuel. It was a suicide mission, but they succeeded. Perhaps the most iconic image of the Liquidators is that of the biorobots. Robotic vehicles sent to clear radioactive debris from the reactor roof failed in the intense radiation, so men, mostly young soldiers, were sent in their place. They would run onto the roof, shovel a few pieces of graphite, and run back, knowing that each exposure shaved years off their lives. Their faces, gaunt and tired, tell a story of sacrifice. The human cost was immense. Many liquidators died within weeks or months from acute radiation syndrome. Thousands more suffered from long-term health effects, cancers, heart disease, birth defects. They saved Europe from a far greater catastrophe, but at an unbearable personal price. The immediate crisis was contained, but the reactor remained an open wound. To seal it, a massive, hastily constructed concrete and steel structure known as the sarcophagus was built. It was a monumental engineering feat, completed in just 206 days, despite lethal radiation levels. The sarcophagus was designed to contain the radioactive materials for 20 to 30 years, giving time to develop a more permanent solution. But it was never meant to be permanent. It was cracking, decaying, and leaking. Inside lay 200 tons of highly radioactive corium, a lava-like mixture of nuclear fuel, concrete, and metal, along with 30 tons of radioactive dust. Around the plant, an exclusion zone was established, a vast area spanning 2,600 square kilometers, effectively frozen in time. Pripyat became a ghost city, a haunting monument to the disaster. Animals returned, but the land remained poisoned. Nature, in its resilient way, began to reclaim the land. Forests grew, wildlife flourished, but beneath the surface, the radiation persisted, a silent, enduring threat. The zone became a morbid paradox, a wildlife sanctuary born from human catastrophe. Decades passed. The world learned from Chernobyl, improving nuclear safety, but the aging sarcophagus remained a ticking bomb. A permanent solution was needed. And so, the world embarked on another monumental engineering challenge, the New Safe Confinement, or NSC. Completed in 2019, the NSC is a marvel of modern engineering, a colossal arch taller than the Statue of Liberty, wider than a football field, designed to contain the radioactive remnants of Reactor 4 for at least 100 years. It was built off-site and then carefully slid into place, a testament to international cooperation and human ingenuity. The NSC allows for the eventual dismantling of the old sarcophagus and the radioactive debris within, a process that will take decades and involve incredibly complex robotic operations. It's a testament to the fact that even in the face of such devastation, humanity strives for solutions. The Chernobyl disaster forced the world to confront the true dangers of nuclear power. It exposed the flaws in Soviet design and a culture of secrecy. It led to significant reforms in nuclear safety protocols globally. The human cost continues to be felt. The exact number of deaths directly attributable to Chernobyl is still debated, but the long-term health effects on liquidators, evacuees, and their descendants are undeniable. Cancers, particularly thyroid cancer, increased dramatically. But Chernobyl also became an unprecedented laboratory for scientific research into radiation's effects on the environment. Scientists continue to study the unique ecosystem within the exclusion zone, learning valuable lessons about resilience and adaptation. Today, the Chernobyl exclusion zone has become an unlikely tourist destination. Visitors walk through the ghost city of Pripyat, a chilling reminder of the past. It's a place of both tragedy and profound historical significance, attracting those who seek to understand, to remember. Chernobyl remains a scar on the landscape and in the collective memory. It's a story of unimaginable loss, but also of incredible bravery, scientific innovation, and the enduring human spirit. It's a stark reminder of the immense power we harness and the even greater responsibility that comes with it. The lessons of Chernobyl are eternal, etched into the very fabric of our understanding of energy, risk, and humanity's place in the modern world. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Chernobyl. If you want to learn more, check out the links in the description below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more historical deep dives, and let us know your thoughts in the comments.